In today's show, we're going to build a Power Apps booking or reservation system. So the idea here is we're going to be able to create an event, create all the dynamic time slots for that event, and then let the users book it. Should be fun. But first, here's our intro. Hi, my name is Shane Young with Power Apps 911. Those guys. And today, we're going to build a Power Apps booking or reservation system. So really what we're going to do is we're going to learn about making dynamic data, right? That's really the fun of this, because what we want to be able to do is jump into our app, say, hey, I'm going to have an event next week, yay! And then I'm going to choose the date, and I'm going to say, I want to be able to book time slots from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. for that event. And then say, do I want those in half-hour increments or 1-hour increments? So we're going to make that input, right? Take that from the user. Based on what they selected there, we're then going to process and create all of the blank events that someone could then sign up for, so all those slots. And then once they've done that, then we'll look over on the other side how the users can reserve the slots. So, if you're not really into any of that, one of the nice things here is this is all about the dynamic data. That's where we're going to focus our time. So, should be fun. Let's switch over to my desktop and take a look. All right, so over here, let's just take a quick look at this. So app is super simplistic, right? Because we're here learn about the concepts, not all the fanciness, I know. But so first off, we want to create an event. We can just click on the little create events button. And you'll notice that there's a little note here for the hide buttons video. So if you wanted to hide this from others, we'll see in a minute, it's hidden from Chewy, but not from me. So we can say create events. We can come over here and be like, all right, we're going to create video event. There you go. When is it? It is today. What's the start time? We're going to say it starts at 9:30. I like to sleep in. And then what's the end time? I definitely like to get off early, so 3:30, right? So 6 hours. And then we're going to say, all right, what is our session length? We want 1-hour sessions or half-hour sessions, up to us. We want 1-hour sessions. So we're going to say create time slots. And then now if we hit the drop down, say video event, we can see that, look, starting at 9:30, there's a 9:30, a 10:30, 11:30, etc. Notice it stops at 2:30, right? Because if the event ends at 3:30, you can't have a 3:30 session, right? So the 2:30 for 1 hour is the last session. But so that's the first part of our challenge here, is building out this way to create events, right? So create these time slots, because now if we want to go sign up for those, if we go over here and say book a time slot, and I will choose our video event, you can see that all the time slots are open. And then if I want to reserve the 11:30 right before lunch, I reserve it. And then not only can I unreserve it, but I can also send a reminder, which would then show up on my Outlook calendar, right? So I'm setting myself a reminder. It's optional. If we look over here like at event 1, you can see that I reserved the 10 a.m. Yeah, that's right. I got up early that day. And you can see that Chewy's got the noon and the 1 events reserved. Notice that I cannot unreserve Chewy's, and I don't get the reminder button for Chewy's events or for unreserved events, only the event that I have previously reserved the slot for. So there you go. Not the most complicated app, but really what it is here is I want to talk to you guys, right? The whole reason I want to make this video is it's about the fundamentals over here so that you can create this, right? You can let your users create their own events, and then you just create this, table of time slots. And then once they've got the table of time slots, then they can reserve those or not. We are going to use SharePoint as a data source here. You could use Dataverse, you could use SQL, it doesn't matter, but we needed somewhere to stick the data, so I'll show you that when we get to that portion. Cool? All right, well, let's switch now into Studio and figure out how this little puppy works, right? So first off, the Create Events button, as you can shockingly guess, I'm sure, if we go to On Select, all it does is navigate to Create Events. Now, when we land over here, I then have all of these fields. And you'll notice I used individual fields, not a form, because I don't like forms. You probably knew that already. Event name is just a simple text input. Event date is a simple date picker. So start time, this is the first one that's interesting. So yes, this is the dropdown, but what I wanted to do here was I wanted not to have to type in all the times, right? Because if you look at the start times, they're literally start at midnight and they go all the way through 11:30 p.m. But I didn't want to type all that in, right? And it doesn't already exist. So I wrote a quick little series of functions here to do that. So let's talk first how we built that. So we'll just give ourselves a new screen. And here we will throw in a gallery. We'll tell it right now, don't show us anything, but just do a simple title field. Okay, So the first thing I do in a situation like that is I'm going to use the sequence function. The sequence function says, give me a number, and I'll make you a table of those numbers. So in the case of a 12-hour day, let's avoid the half hours. Let's just do like 12 hours to make this easier. So if we do 12, like so, then now if we look in our gallery, let's pull our gallery down a little bit, and we set this to be value, we've got all of those, okay? Now, with sequence, there's an optional parameter here. So I want it to start at 0, because in reality, I want 0 to 11, right? That's still 12 numbers. It just happens to start at 0. Okay, so that's the first piece, right? I need to find my number range. If you're going to do all day in hour increments, it'd be 24. All day in half hour increments, it'd be 48, but you probably knew that. But so now what I want to do is I need those additional pieces, right? So I can use AddColumns. Right, AddColumns takes a table, right? Sequence puts out a table, so it takes that table and says, what column do you want to add? And I'm going to say my time. And then the expression, this is where you can calculate or just have a hard-coded column. But if we just put in something like a formula, we can get whatever the value that formula returns. So in my case, the first thing I did is said, all right, well, what if I did date time value, and then I just said 12. We'll just do AM just to avoid any confusion. If we do that, now they all say 12, but if we go right here, we'll just add a second label. You can see that right now all of the my times show 12 AM. Not exactly what I wanted, but in the ballpark. So now that we understand that's how you would get a column that had just 12 AM, what if we want to add time to it? So what we're going to do is we're going to say date add, and then that time, and then what goes over here, how many minutes do you want to add? Well, so we said we want to add in hour increments. How many minutes are in an hour? 60, right? So we're going to say 60, and then we're going to multiply it by the number from here. So the 0, the 1, the 2, the 3, all the way to 11. And so that is called value, which can be really confusing, but you can just literally type value here. And if we close that and close that, now we're like, wait a minute, that's not right. Look, because now it's 8/8, 10/7, it's still at midnight. And that is because date add has an optional parameter called units. And so for units here, we're going to say minutes. Now 12 AM, 1 AM, 2 AM, 3 AM. There you go, right? Nothing too crazy, but that gives you the ability to pare that down. And then if you could just take this if you wanted, and you could say, hey, I want to use the text function around it. And then we want to say, show me in short time right here. And now look, 12 AM, 1 AM, 2 AM, 3 AM, 4 AM, 5 AM, all in a dynamically created table. I could have put this in a collection if I wanted, but since I just really needed it to show up in a dropdown, right, just in a list, I was quickly able to wrap this together. Okay, this is the core skill, right? Like if you're thinking, Shane, that's crazy. Why would I don't even care, right? You should be able to write this. This idea of using sequence plus add columns to shape data the way that you want very quickly, that is a skill that everyone should have, because faking data or building dynamic data is really, sequence, add columns. There's not a whole lot I can't do with those quick little fakes. So think about that a little bit as you go. Okay, but so if we go back to here, basically that's what I did here. I did a little bit different. I ended up calculating both the time and the date as separate objects. So same concept, right? Just taking that multiplication. I also did this as my num. Let's go back over there for 1 second and I'll talk about that. I meant to talk about that the first time. Go away. So remember I told you I found it really confusing that value here is a function. It's also a column name. So anytime that I'm working with a table, whether it be with like ForAll or like with a sequence table inside of AddColumns, I can use as. And so as this gives me a way to give that data that comes out of there an alias. And I like to do something like data in all caps. I want to use a generic word, but notice now it's mad. It's like you can't say value because now I have to say data.value. Now I get the same result. But by doing this as, it avoids me being confused, like what value am I using? Where did that come from? I just do data dot, right? Let's get rid of that for a second, data dot, and it shows me all the columns available, which is only one right now, value. But if I was foralling through a SharePoint list or a collection, that data.collection or data. And then I'd see just the columns tied to that collection. I wouldn't be able to get lost. That's why we like to use this as a lot. Okay, so that's how we got the 9 and the 5. Now, what happens if I say I want to start at 9 a.m. and end at 8 a.m., right? Which is wrong. So it says end time must be greater than start time. All I'm doing there is that's a simple label. And I've set the visible property to be like, hey, if start selected time is greater than or equal to the end selected time, right? If that's true, then show the dropdown. You also notice here that create time slots grayed out because its display property, display mode, it says, hey, if that label 6 is visible, which means that they did something wrong and it's broken right now, then disabled, right? Or if the other label is visible, or if they didn't select a date or set a title, right? What's the other label? I should show you that one. So up here, if I try to recreate, we have that one called EV1. So I said my event names must be unique. So how did I do that? This label, visible property, is doing a lookup to the time slots to see if the title exists. If it does, then this is true. And if this is true, then they can't proceed, right? If you look down here at the bottom, I have a video on finding and dealing with duplicates. So you can just jump to that. Or I might have put a link up there. I might have forgotten. Who knows? Okay. But see, so right now my app has got 2 errors. So if I change this to EV11, that error goes away. If I change this to 1030, that error goes away. Bingo, bango, we can now create time slots, right? So that was what we did here. Or what we did to kind of get to this point. The session length, this is also just a simple table that has the text and the words and then the length. And notice I'm capturing minutes because I don't want to have to tell my function sometimes add minutes, sometimes add hours. So I'm just either adding 30 minutes or 60 minutes for an hour. I know, shocking, 60 minutes and 1 hour. Same thing. Who knew? I did. Okay, so that's how these work. So then now down here, if we go to on select, this is what is going to create it in our SharePoint list. And so what we're doing in this case, right, we've got to go back to sequence again because I want to loop through. I need to create a blank record. Remember, there's nothing in my SharePoint list until I create it. So I need to figure out how many things in the SharePoint list to create. And so we're using sequence. And this right here, this is the DateDiff function, right? So the DateDiff function says take the selected my date and selected end date. What's the difference between the two of those in hours? There's a 1 hour difference. And then I said, hey, if the selected length equals 30 in that dropdown, remember this dropdown right here. So if they show 30, then I need to take the number of hours between these two and multiply it by 2. And if not, 1. So that's how I'm determining if they've got a variance, of 1 hour, right? Then basically these people can only book a 9 a.m. slot, right? Because even though they chose 10:30, there's not 2 1 hour slots in an hour and a half. If they change it to 9 to 12, right now there should be 3 1 hour slots. So if we select the DateDiff, that would be 3. And then selected length is not 30, so it'd be 1, so I'd do 3. But if they change this to 30 minutes, then now that's going to be 6, right? 3 hours, 3, that is not 3, that is 3. 3 times 2 equals 6. And if you're struggling with those type of things or you're having a hard time with your calculations, throw those in a label, right? Just copy that stuff, throw a label on the screen, and just put it in a label. So then that way you can sit here and jostle around with your boxes and be like, what happens in that case? So there's, that many sessions in there, right? So there's 10 sessions in that particular time frame. And then we can go down here. And so you can start to kind of mess around with your time slots, but you need to get that dynamically so you get the right number of slots created. Then we're going to loop through and patch, right? So what is patch? We're going to patch the time slot SharePoint list, default time slots. We're going to create one record for every one of the numbers we came up with above. In our SharePoint list, if we go look at our SharePoint list under list settings, you're going to see that it's pretty straightforward. There's a title. We're going to keep the event title. there is a row number. That is that number. Remember the 0 to 11 in the original example, that sequence number. I kept those. I'm not using those, but I figured I probably am going to want those at some point in my life, so I'm keeping them. Okay, I got them. Event dates, that's from the date picker. The time slot, that is the different calculate, so the 9, the 9:30, the 10, the 10:30. Whether or not it's reserved, we're going to see that we're going to set that to no. Reserved by is going to be single line of text, and it's going to be blank. And then the slot length, are we doing 30-minute slots or 60-minute slots? So back over here. Nope, not there. Back over here. So there you go. Row number is the data value. Remember data being from the sequence. So data value. Event date is just a selected date from the date picker. Time slot is date add, the selected my date, and then taking the length and multiplying it by the data value. Remember that's the multiply by 0, multiply by 1, by 2 to get that number counting up in minutes. Reserved is always false. Title is the title from the input. Reserved by is nothing. And slot length is the number from the dropdown, the 30 or the 60. Okay, so that's how we're doing it. Now, I guess I should have also said, if you just want to steal this app because you're like, this is way too complicated, like I need a working version, remember, you can go to training.powerapps911.com, find the YouTube library, and if you subscribe over there, you can download this, all the other wonderful apps we have. So lots of ways to, just download the working app. Okay, anyway, mini commercial over. Okay, so that's that. We'll delete that because we don't need it anymore. But so that's all we're doing, right? We're pushing this to the SharePoint list. So when we say, all right, create event 11, boom, create time slots. And so then now if we jump over here, oh, well, I mean, we can see them here, right? There's event 11. And then also over in our SharePoint list, all of our events are here. And so now we have all these blank unreserved slots that people can sign up for. So how do they do that? They go over here. The book a time slot also just navigates, so we'll press that. And so then this gallery shows us whatever event we choose. And you could have those events filtered out, right? Like I just did a quick distinct from the time slots over there because, trying to go quick. But you could definitely have a master list of events to filter this by. You could only show them events that are upcoming, right? There's all kinds of different ways you could filter it. But the key here is that in my gallery, I want to be able to show them the items tied to the event that they chose, right? So we're filtering the time slots. In this case, where title equals the event they chose. Then the reserved button here, it is going to patch the SharePoint list, right? So patch this item in the SharePoint list. It's going to set reserved to true and then reserved by and the current logged in user's name. So if I press this slot right here, the 8:30 slot, and reserve it, it reserves for me. Now, if we look, the way that it turned gray is that there is a template fill for if this item reserved. So if this is true, then set it to gray. If not, make it white. That's why it looks that way for me. In addition, there's a few other little pieces here. You notice that there is a icon. There's the X icon. So icon 1 is the check mark. So I probably should have named this icon check. And then we'll call this one icon cancel. Okay, so the icon cancel, what that does is that patches the item as well, but it sets this item reserved to false, so unreserve it, and it sets the reserved by to blank, right? Because if you just put nothing there, then it wouldn't have changed the reserved by, so it still said it was reserved by me, even though it wasn't. And so this is one of those annoying things about SharePoint. Now remember, it is possible to patch blanks, but to do that, you have to turn on experimental feature, which I'm never a fan of showing, so we're not going to do that today. But technically speaking, if you turned on formula ever, this one right here, but it changes some other behaviors in the app, which wouldn't affect this app, but might affect others. So be careful with it. Don't go turning that on just on a whim. Just patch it to a single space character there. And then last but not least was my button for putting it on my calendar. And so that one is from a previous video. Here's the link to that, right? Create an Outlook calendar entry over here. But basically, we're just posting to my calendar the current time zone, the current time slot, and then plus the slot length. We have to do some time zone fix-up stuff, but we're just posting calendar events using the Outlook connector here, right? That's a whole nother video we're not going to show today. But there you go, right? This is a very simple look at this, right? But I've used this technique to build really complex reserving apps. But the key message here is give them a way to dynamically pre-create the time slots to be booked. And so you use sequence, right, to have fun to do that. And then once they're in there, then you show those back to the users, and then you're just letting them, toggle that they reserved it or they didn't reserve it. We've also added logic in the past to only let people reserve up to 2 slots in a row, 2 slots, and the 2 slots had to be together. So that was some weird logic to make sure that they chose 1 slot, then they could only choose the slot before it or after it. But we didn't do any of that in today's app, but I've definitely done some craziness like that as well. This works for, here we're booking slots. We've used this to book meeting rooms. We've used this to check out inventory of stuff. Anything that you want to do, right? It doesn't have to be all time driven. We just kind of did time driven because it usually has a time element to it. But there you go. That's everything I've got for today. What do you think? Thoughts, comments? Leave them below. Other ideas of ways you'd want to see and more scenarios you want covered? I'm all ears. But yeah, with that, I'm going to say thanks and have a great day. Hey, me again. Before you go, click on the subscribe button, right? Join the list of 100,000 plus people that have subscribed already. Or if you need any help, right? Check us out at Power Apps 911. We do big projects, little projects. We do training. We do everything, and we can help you. Or if you want to see more videos, you probably do, then just click on the playlist above. Cool? Thanks, and have a great day.